Good morning. I think we will start. We are not so many today. I hope you have a good evening and a good night's sleep. Today the conference has two parts. The first part is one session with the Joint Research Center representatives, where they will present us the targeted support that they give it in order to implement smart specialization strategies. And after that, we have a presentation from Mr. Husman from Northern Netherlands regarding monitoring the implementation of smart specialization strategies. In the second part of the day will be a task force of the Beyond EDP partners, and we have study visit and dinner in Colțești, Județ Alba. I think we have to start. From the beginning, we have a presentation from representative of GRC, Mr. Dimitrios Pontikakis. I hope he's okay. And Mrs. Escane Arecul-Pavule. They will present us the targeted support to RIS3 implementation. Will be a presentation of 40 minutes, I understand. And after that, we want to discuss about the possibility that GRC can support the implementation of RIS3 in our region, maybe especially in the central region or in the other regions of Romania or from the partners from Beyond EDP. Now I give the floor to Mr. Pontikakis.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much to the Center authorities for the very kind invitation to be here and talk to you today. And thank you also to the Beyond EDP project partners for the ambient collaboration so far. Although we're not a member of the project, we have followed it very closely and with great interest, as there are important overlaps in what we do. And we're here today to tell you a little bit about our activities in support of smart specialization strategies, and in particular the Lighting Regions project. And first I would like to say very brief words about who we are. We come from the Joint Research Center. The Joint Research Center is not an agency, as many sometimes mistakenly believe we're part of the European Commission. We're the European Commission's in-house science service. We're distributed across the EU in 7 institutes or sites, as we call them now. There is one in Italy, one of the oldest one in Brussels, in Petten in the Netherlands, in Karlsruhe in Germany, and we come from Seville. In Seville is the social science plus economics outfit. So the other sides do a lot of natural science work. We focus mostly on economics and related disciplines. We come from a unit called territorial development. So we work very closely with the regions with an explicit mandate to help them in economic development. There are a number of activities there within our unit, including the S3 platform, which you may have heard before, but also other projects such as the Lighting Regions project and the Higher Education for Smart Specialization projects we will be focusing on today. So we will be talking to you about R3 RIS3 support to Lighting Regions in general across Europe, and in particular in Romania, because it's a particular focus of our project. We'll also be presenting some of our horizontal activities, and by this we mean activities that cut across EU regions. in addition to the higher education for smart specialization project and the Stairway to Excellence project. In the end, we will have quite a bit of time for questions and discussion. I would like to anticipate a little bit of this discussion by saying that we will be thinking about the future of the Central region in particular, of RIS3 in Romania more generally, and of possible interactions and overlaps and possibly even contributions from the JRC in the development of RIS3 in Romania. So, lagging regions, what are they? We have followed two criteria in identifying lagging regions. They are either low growth regions, where GDP per capita is below the EU average, and have not converged since the financial crisis. And this includes many regions in Greece, Italy, Spain, and Portugal. And another group of regions are less developed regions, regions where GDP per capita is less than 50% of the EU average, regions that are commonly found in Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, and Romania. So, what are the aims of the project? The aims are to support the refinement and implementation of RIS3 strategies in the selected EU regions. And the emphasis is very much on refinement and on helping develop the strategy and bring it down to the project level and working at the level of processes rather than at the level of projects, which will leave very much the regional authorities. And it is also very much a voluntary project in that we work at the request of regional authorities and very much need the collaboration to carry this forward. And we have now collaboration in 8 regions across the EU, and there are discussions elsewhere. I will talk a little bit about what these regions are in a moment. Another aim of the project is to generate lessons and a model for other regions, so it's to facilitate learning. We also anticipate that it will be a testbed for theories in RIS3 and for understanding RIS3 because it is still a relatively new concept. It's the first programming period that this is really attempted EU-wide. As with other things, you would anticipate that some things we could learn a lot from this, and some things could be done better next time. S3 is also, we think, an entry point for wider discussions about other structural issues, about wider bottlenecks in the innovation system, about issues to do with governance and with coordination between regional and national authorities, about which we will talk about more in a moment. So we have a number of specific objectives in the lagging region project, which I generally alluded to in a moment ago. Let me tell you a little bit about the history of the project. How did it all start? This is unlike many other European Commission projects. It was initiated by the European Parliament, and it dates back to 2015 when specific parliamentarians approached the JRC and asked us to support the development of RIS3 strategies in one region in northern Greece, the region of Eastern Macedonia and Thrace. This project proved successful, particularly for the region involved. It felt it had quite a meaningful impact. It helped build trust and commitment by across a broad range of regional stakeholders. It improved our understanding of RIS3, of how it actually works in practice. It helped develop what we call participatory capacity building, identify challenges, particularly legal and administrative bottlenecks that were not quite in tune with what RIS3 theory had anticipated. And it had another less obvious impact in generating a momentum. So, as I said previously, there are a number of there are two, so to speak, umbrella projects under which our support for RIS3 is offered. One is Lagging Regions and the other is Stairway to Excellence. Lagging Regions focuses very much on RIS3 strategy, preparation and implementation, whereas Stairway to Excellence is about helping regions internationalize their activities and raise the capacities of public research and higher education in particular, raising the bar so they can collaborate internationally, they can reach internationally recognized excellence criteria and improve their participation in European programs such as Horizon 2020. So these are the regions we work with. We work with regions in Bulgaria, and we continue the collaboration with regions in Greece. There is some uncertainty about Hungary, but we have a number of other regions, in particular in Romania, who have worked very closely with Northwest and Northeast regions, and I see that some of our partners are present today. We also work with the region of Extremadura, and I understand we also have some of our partners present here now. So, what is it in concrete terms? What kind of support do we offer? We intervene at the level of the system rather than at the level of the project. So we help regions put together a framework for the development of a RIS3 strategy. We help them with methodological toolbox, and we start off from market demand, from a business idea. We work with them in so-called project, starting off with the discovery process using a focus group approach to come up with a set of ideas. One possible idea that was explored in previous occasions was the use of wine-making residues. To give you a concrete example, we then tease out the research and innovation components of all of these ideas and the fundability, what parts can be funded and how could they be funded. And again, we don't do this ourselves, we help regions and potential project partners discover how to do this. We very much focus on how. Then the idea is defined, a number of partners and potential funding sources are identified, and using so-called project development labs. We go through a number of possible bottlenecks that may arise at later stages of the process, such as issues to do with state aid, the avoidance of double funding between national and regional goals, and the sustainability and viability of the project in the longer term, the role of key emerging technologies, and the need to involve in the process champions or leaders, usually large firms with both the willingness and the capacity to make meaningful change in the region, and also wider issues such as skills and training and international coordination. So we do this with this range of tools, so to speak. Use peer review, we have an RDI funding guide, we organize a number of technical meetings with international experts, also in the context of our working groups. So this is a range of the tools that we use. We have a continuously evolving EDP focus group methodology that has been tested on a number of cases, and it's been refined in light of lessons. We'll have tailored peer review events. We'll have a board of critical friends, international experts with a lot of experience that can offer constructive feedback to regional authorities in a friendly, in a closed group setting. And some of these activities are documented in technical reports and studies published on our website, occasionally in more scholarly journals. We have brought over a range of reports which we would like to distribute, so you have a look at the range of output that comes out from the JSE. We'll have one copy of each of these reports, so if you're interested, you can download it online. So, outcomes from what do we hope, what do we expect will result from this support? What regions can expect a specific support in the use of various RIS3 instruments, what instruments are fit for purpose, what kinds of synergies might exist between funding instruments, and methodological support in the development of the entrepreneurial discovery process. Regions can also expect horizontal support in the development of capabilities in monitoring and governance, and the facilitation of events such as this one today, where there is cross-regional learning, where lessons from one region can be transferred to another. For the European Commission, this is very important because it helps us understand better how RIS3 is actually put in practice in regions. It can be, as I said, an entry point to broader issues. And very concretely, from an analytical perspective as well, it can help us understand some of the reasons behind slow and limited growth from an approach that is slightly different from that of traditional economic analysis. So, focusing now into Romania. Like I said, the large part of our project is dedicated to Romania. And this project is led by Dr. Marina Ranga, who has engaged very closely with regions in the Northeast and the Northwest. In principle, we're very happy and very open to discuss these issues with other regions in Romania. And I will tell you a little bit about the evolution of the project and give you some specific examples of the activities this has resulted. The project started in October last year. At the very first stage, Marina engaged another colleagues engaged in a number of exploratory visits to help with priority setting, support to the entrepreneurial discovery process, and the development of collaborative processes for stakeholder engagement. At a later stage, in March this year, stage 2 of the project, a deeper engagement began, meant to bring about change in the system, transformative actions, and acted a little bit as a bridge between actions at the regional and the national level. In stage 3, which is where we are now, where the strategies have been defined and we're down at the implementation level, there are a number of lessons to be drawn and lessons to be transferred to other regions, both in Romania and beyond. So, I don't want to take too much of your time with specifics, but just to give you a taster of the kinds of activities that the JRC has engaged with Northeast and Northwest. There have been several meetings with local RDAs, with institutions such as the local chambers of commerce, administrations, universities, research, public research institutions and businesses, local clusters, NGOs, focus groups were met and worked very intensively on the development of the strategy, which then prepared the ground for the translation of these strategic objectives into projects. And we do that in the so-called project development labs, which aim to further develop proposals, to extract proposals, to capitalize on the willingness of participants to engage in the process and get them to commit to specific projects. There are, in addition to these hands-on activities, there's also analytical support. We're engaging with external experts on specific studies about issues to do with technology transfer from academia and public research onto businesses. The supply and demand for technology and also for human resource mobility. Marina has also engaged in an evaluation of the entrepreneurial technological transfer capability of universities, looking at 11 universities with a questionnaire and a number of recommendations for follow-up support actions will be made. So, a lot of activity. If you would like more information, we have brought together a progress implementation report that is dated October 2017. We have only 7 copies of it here, but you're very welcome to have a look and find out more about the specifics. So I will not, unless you have a particular interest in any of these, I will not focus too much on each point. I can very briefly talk about a focus group that shows some of the workings of the discovery process. The way we work, we invite actors from the quadruple helix, from businesses, from research and education, from public administration, and from civil society, the end users of technology or of knowledge more broadly. We try to find out about the current activities, the medium to long-term plans, and try to identify what kind of overlap there may be in these activities and what kind of potential for joining forces. Examples of ideas developed in Romania, in particular, include a database of plant resources, anti-acne products, locally branded bioproducts, smart packaging, and cosmetics and parapharma. In later stages of the process of the project, of the Romanian project, we will be engaging in a very broad range of communication and dissemination activities, including a workshop on impacts of the project in Romania and the way forward in the spring of next year. As I signaled earlier, a lot of this work is documented in reports and policy briefs that we publish on our website, so I would encourage those interested to visit our website and find out more, and also bookmark it to keep checking in the near future. Now, The Like in Regions project, in addition to focusing working very closely with individual regions, also has a range of horizontal activities that are relevant across Europe. There are three dimensions to this line of work. One very important one is governance. It's what is happening within the regions. And what regional public administrations themselves can do to support the process. What are their capacities, their unmet needs, and what need there may be for reform both within the region, more widely in the national system, in the relationship between the region and the central government authorities. We're particularly interested in the long-term sustainability of the entrepreneurial discovery process. We heard yesterday a number of times that the willingness and attention of stakeholders is a scarce resource that should be used with great caution. And so we're very much aware of this and thinking about ways to maintain momentum. We'd also like to find out about the extent of coordination between regional and national levels and how this can be improved and the effectiveness of coordination. We're looking, or rather we're beginning to look, because there is a very broad range and very high complexity of issues in this area, the synergies or complementarities between various funding instruments, EU funding instruments, national funding instruments, do not always mix together. And there are a number of legal, administrative, and other issues that require very close study. This, we hope, will lead to reform in the long run, but also very much actionable advice as to what can happen now. In this context, we're just about to launch a questionnaire survey of governments across EU regions, and all EU regions are invited to participate. This survey is, I would call it a little bit introspective, in that it asks public authorities to tell us a little bit about what their current capabilities and their current competencies, both legal, jurisdictional, so to speak, and also in terms of very specific human resource competencies that they have in-house, maybe, and what their further needs for development might be in the long run, and how they're thinking about addressing them, perhaps with training, perhaps with hiring more experts, with applying for more funding, and that will lead to, that will provide input to the work of a working group composed of international experts, and of course a great many representatives from regional public authorities who can reflect on ways to upgrade capabilities within regional authorities. We also have a range of activities on monitoring and evaluation. There's another working group there with facilitator on mutual learning on how to develop monitoring methodologies that may be of particular interest as well to the Central region. A very original tool in this respect is the development of a massive open online course on monitoring and evaluation that the JRC is preparing. Our colleague Dr. Elisabetta Marinelli is leading this activity. Filming has started, as I understand, and by mid-2018 the course should be online and everyone can follow this. And of course, we engage in a number of activities in transnational collaboration, and we envisage a workshop on interregional collaboration to take place sometime early next year. One example of a horizontal activity is a recent study that is about to be published. It's not quite published yet, but it will be in the coming weeks. It's a horizontal study of how the entrepreneurial discovery process has been implemented so far across the EU. It's a study that involves a good broad cross-section of European regions. I think over 120 regions participated. It examined the participation of various stakeholders and issues to do with participation. Many of the questions that were raised yesterday, it would be very interesting to see how European, how this has been approached by other regions, and what types of lessons can be drawn. The methods that regions employ to engage different participants. The study is necessarily statistical and presents the results in a summary form, but some interesting patterns do emerge. The institutional setup used to deploy the EDP, the kind of governance structure that was preferred, and what happened with stakeholder input. How do regions in practice use stakeholder input as opposed to many expectations about how it should be used? I can pre-announce some of the findings at the level of teasers. The EDP is a continuous process, as has been long expected, and it turns out that this is actually happening in practice. Regions are very much aware of the need to continuously engage with stakeholders and have very much responded to the need for adjustments when this need emerged. So, as we saw yesterday in the presentation of the Central region strategy, that they had to be refined and readjusted and had to be slight course corrections. This experience is actually, it turns out, very common across the EU. It also shows that there is some untapped potential in terms of interaction with civil society. The fourth helix has not been used to its full potential, or at least so it seems. It's also very interesting to see that regions expect the degree of interaction to increase over time, which brings the question to what extent is this sustainable, and how can and should this be managed? Perhaps one of the most positive or hopeful findings is that most regions have found the entrepreneurial discovery process very useful. It has not been a revolution for them. For most regions, it carries on a line of tradition of engagement with regional stakeholders. It has not transformed the way they work completely, but nevertheless, they do find that useful outcomes have come out from the process, and useful additions to the way they work with regions have emerged. I announced previously this governance survey that we are launching, and I would just say that you can expect results for this by early next year, and we were perhaps thinking of announcing the results in possibly a joint event with the Beyond GDP project partners. We can hardly think of a more appropriate setting for the presentation of these results. The result of this activity will then feed into a working group, as well as into work that attempts to structure a little bit the qualitative information that we collect from regions to make sure that it is more easily accessible and interrogated, perhaps in database format, that we may be doing in the near future with the OECD. Now, because this session is very much about the future, before I pass on to my colleague Skarne, I'd just like to say a few words about the current thrust of policy development by the European Commission in general, not by the JSE, in terms of RIS3, and which may provide some inklings about what is about to happen in the near future. This is confined to the current programming period and to what you can find in the recent Commission communication of last July about smart specialization, which basically reiterates the importance that the Commission attaches to the process and the commitment to continue the course, but also to learn from this and to make necessary adjustments and offer very much tangible support to regions in the implementation of this thing. So, a lot of interest, many smart specialization strategies have been developed so far. About 40 billion of ERDF funds have been earmarked or programmed in terms of smart specialization, 1.8 billion of ESF in the additional national funding. The European Commission has set up the Smart Specialization Platform, which are our colleagues in Seville. That's another project. We're working in parallel, but in close coordination with us to help with strategy formulation. They work at a more at a higher level of abstraction than we do. They develop the tools, the processes. They also work closely with region, but not as closely as we do, perhaps. We have offered technical support to 170 EU regions and 18 national governments in the development of smart specialization. So this is just to show how important this policy framework is for European regional policy. There are four major challenges, current challenges at this moment and going forward at the regional level. One is to engage in continuing reform, in producing an enabling business environment, continuing investing in skills, and improving the quality of research and higher education. Cooperation is another important dimension, particularly in the regional and cross-border partnerships. Providing an additional impulse for the recognition of the importance of research and innovation in less developed or transition regions is a very important challenge. It's very frequently the case that innovation policies compete for attention with other very much legitimate policy priorities in less developed and transition regions, which can make it more difficult than usually is the case to prepare RIS3 strategies. And the additional, the final challenge is how to harness synergies between policies, various policies and various instruments. There's a proliferation of policy frameworks, funding instruments, both at the European and at the national levels, and it's common knowledge that they're not used as effectively as they could be done, or as efficiently as they could be done. So there's a need to study these in greater detail. In terms of the future, there are two new pilot calls. There's a pilot call in the regional innovation projects that looks at transnational innovation partnerships between regions, and it's particularly focused in supporting commercialization and the scale-up of innovative businesses. The other one is on industrial transition, providing technical assistance and grants for regions that aim to facilitate transition using broad-based research and innovation policies. You can find more about them online. They are managed by DG Regio. And at this point, I will pass the floor to my colleague Eskarne, who will tell you more about the Higher Education Smart Specialization Project.
Okay, thank you, Dimitris. Good morning, everyone. So, my name is Eskarne Arregui, and I work as well at the GRC Seville. And, well, today I will be talking about two project heads, which is focused on understanding which is the role of higher education institutions in smart specialization, and how to increase and boost this central role that universities can have in the strategies. And secondly, I would devote my presentation to a Stairway to Excellence project, which is focused in understanding how funding synergies can be implemented in practice and how to address the innovation gap in Europe. So to start with, the HES project. So the project was launched in 2016 by the S3 platform, and it is managed in collaboration with DG Education and Culture of the European Commission. It has clear synergies with other GRC and DG Regio activities. For example, you are very familiar, of course, with the S3 thematic platforms. In the thematic platforms, they have identified already some difficulties that the S3 priority areas and the cross-cutting activities have not sufficiently considered human resources and how the provision and the offer of the workforce is going to feed into the priority areas selected in the smart specialization strategies. So we are liaising, of course, with our colleagues of the thematic platforms. Of course, this project is as well complementary to the lagging regions activities that Dimitris was previously presenting, and the Stairway to Excellence activities. It has as well synergies with other DG education activities that you might be familiar with, that I will go through quickly. The University Business Forum, because of course the HES project is looking to how universities can have closer interactions and can engage more with other regional and regional innovation actors in the region. It has connections and synergies with the Erasmus Plus program, mainly with the Knowledge Alliances, which is focused in the joint development of curricula between mainly companies and universities. And we are looking at that as well in HES projects. With HE Innovate, which is looking to the entrepreneurial and innovation dimension of universities. And the knowledge and innovation communities that are, as you might know, is bringing together the actors in the knowledge triangle. So, well, you can find full information about the project in our website. Why it is important to further involve universities in a smart specialization, and why we are interested in looking at this. So we have seen in the analysis that we have performed in the GRC and in different reviews done by the S3 platforms that human capital dimension has not been sufficiently considered in the definition of the smart specialization strategies. And in those strategies that have considered this human capital dimension, the type of activities that can help to achieve the objectives of the strategy have not been sufficiently defined. So we see that the involvement of the universities and higher education institutions has not been sufficiently considered, or even in some of them has been completely neglected. And we see that S3 managers, they place a very high emphasis on the need of the higher involvement of universities in the development of human capital in response to the S3 implementation. And we have seen as well in different analyses that we have carried out that the prioritized domains, that the priority areas selected in S3 will not be sustained if there is no consideration of how the human capital can feed into the system and can feed those priority areas selected in the strategies. There is as well, we have analyzed, in a policy brief that will be published in some weeks, we have analyzed the use of ESIF funds, European Structural Investment Funds, and how higher education aspects are being funded and have been considered in these funds. And we have seen that a very small amount of the funds is targeting higher education actually, in fact we see that 0.46% is devoted only to higher education in the European social funds, which is a very small portion of the total funds. So we see that there is as well an opportunity to raise awareness on how to use structural investment funds to fund innovation actions related to higher education, and not only those activities related to infrastructure, which are the most prevalent ones in the definition of in the allocation of the funds. We see as well that there is an important lack of integration of universities in the triangle of knowledge. So further activities can be promoted in the smart specialization strategies to better integrate universities in the regional innovation system, and especially as well we are looking to how to integrate the three missions of the university, how the three missions can fit into the strategies. So in this context that I have presented, we see that the project can have a look, and it is important that it has a look to how the human capital can contribute to the smart specialization priorities, and how to feed those priorities adequately, and how these can be integrated in the governance system of the smart specialization strategies, and to strengthen the contribution of the universities to the regional innovation system. So regarding the objectives of the HES project, we are focusing in three core objectives. So we want to look on how to further integrate higher education and universities in the knowledge triangle, and how to use an S3 policy mix, which are the interesting S3 policy mixes that could be used to boost such integration. As I was mentioning before, we are looking as well to how to promote the synergetic use of not only structural investment funds, but other programs at European level, such as the knowledge alliances or the knowledge and innovation communities, that they are contributing as well greatly to the integration of the universities in the regional innovation system. And especially to look to how to strengthen the role of universities in the S3 governance system. As a secondary objectives, we are looking to how to promote the cooperation of universities with other actors of the portable helix, because we have seen that certain regions have difficulties, and there are scarce collaborations of universities, especially with companies. And we are having a look as well to how which kind of reforms have to be undertaken in universities to make them more entrepreneurial and to get them more engaged in the S3 implementation. So in terms of how we are addressing the project, we are addressing different case studies in a selected number of regions at European level. So far we have covered 2 regions, the Northeast Romania region and the Navarra region, which is an advanced region in the north of Spain. And more recently, in fact in September this year, we have started with 3 new pilots that will be finishing in 2018, that they are covering Puglia region in Italy, Centre-Val de Loire in France, and well, a Bulgarian region which is still to be confirmed. Regarding to what we are looking in, specifically in the case studies, we want to provide evidence, to find out evidence on how higher education institutions are contributing to the implementation of the S3. We want to see how different, how structural investment funds are using in complementarity with other funds in an S3 policy mix in order to boost the participation of universities in the strategies. And for that, we are analyzing the specificities of certain regions, understanding their context and the kind of challenges they are addressing. We are as well helping to build regional partnerships. So we are trying to see which are the demands in terms of human capital in the regional context and how the university is responding to those demands, how these demands are being considered by the university, and how this match or mismatch is feeding into the strategies. And finally, we are extracting a number of policy implications, policy recommendations, and we are identifying as well a number of actions together with different actors, higher education managers, but as well other actors of the regional innovation system, to see which kind of actions could be taken in the region to try to address those challenges and have a higher involvement of universities in the strategies. So we want these policy implications to be useful to other European regions, to be some learning initiatives to undergo similar actions or initiatives in other regions. The type of methods we are using in Hayes case study to cover the analysis of those regions is a variety of methods. So the main ones are on the left-hand side. So first of all, we need to understand very well the context of the region. We need to understand the higher education system, how it works, the level of autonomy of universities, the governance system in the country, if the region has competencies or not on higher education. We try to analyze as well the S3 policy mix that is being used, is currently used, the use of structural investment funds, and we see the connections of the university to the different actors of the innovation system. We undergo as well interviews with higher education managers, and not only with higher education managers, but also other actors with which universities are collaborating or could be collaborating in the innovation system. And we as well analyze and map the governance system, the existing governance system in the S3. And well, afterwards we have some additional methods that we use in certain cases, depending on the context and what we find out in our analysis. So, for example, we bring examples of other regions at European level that can be to have like a peer review to validate certain findings of our work. And we carry out workshops with different actors of the innovation system in order to identify as well the type of actions that could be performed in the region to improve the collaboration of the university with the different actors. Regarding the case studies that we have developed so far, I'm going to go now a bit more in depth into the Northeast Romanian case study. This case study was coordinated by our colleague Dr. Elisabetta Marinelli, and together with a very close cooperation of the Northeast Regional Development Agency that is today with us. Why we thought it was interesting to have a look to the Northeast Romania context. So the Northeast Romania region, it has a very good higher education system with well-established universities, but they are mainly concentrated in the education and research mission. And not so much in the third mission of the university. So the legal framework introduced difficulties to be able to address and to perform the third mission of the universities. We have as well interest in having a look a regional innovation system which is in an early stage, such as the Northeast Romania one. And the context of Northeast Romania was as well very interesting because even if it has an important number of higher education institutions, of universities, they do not have strong collaborations among them. And so we wanted to see how these collaborations could be strengthened in the context of the smart specialization strategy. So just to have a quick overview, even if some of you might know about the characteristics of the region, it has a low GDP per capita. In fact, it ranks 260 out of 263 regions in the European Union. Its economy is based in low-tech sectors, mainly textiles, food, wood, and metal products. These sectors they hire mainly lower skilled professionals. Nevertheless, the capital Iași, it is a very important cultural center, very well recognized at the national level. And as I was mentioning, it has an incipient regional innovation system. Regarding the higher education system, it has 7 public universities which rank very high. In fact, 3 of them are in the top 10 of Romanian university classification. It has as well 2 private universities, and these universities differ very much in size, the scientific areas covered, the education provided, and the type of relationships with other actors of the innovation system. But as I was saying, they are mainly focused on their education and research mission, and not that much in the third mission. We had a look as well to the Northeast Romania registry. So the Northeast Romania region is a front runner in terms of the work that the RDA has done in the definition of the smart specialization strategy with the orchestration of the different actors of the research and innovation system. And this is feeding the national strategy, and they have identified 4 horizontal priorities that you can see there on innovation competencies in new generations, innovative enterprises, initiatives to boost clusterization and internationalization, and technical assistance. These horizontal priorities are feeding into the 6 vertical priorities on agri-food, biotech, ICT, textiles and new materials, tourism and environment. Regarding the methodology that has been followed in the Northeast Romania case study, first of all, an exploratory workshop was organized. In this exploratory workshop, the RTA, together with the higher education managers of all universities, they identified the key issues and the key challenges that the region was addressing in terms of the participation of the universities in the strategy, the lack of or the scarce collaborations between the universities, and they performed a self-assessment in order to see how the region was doing in terms of the involvement of higher education in the regional innovation system. And it was a first starting point to build trust among the different universities around the table. After the exploratory workshop, semi-structured interviews were carried out. So we had an expert in order to carry out these interviews with the higher education managers. This was done in autumn 2016. And this helped to have a deeper understanding on which are the key issues and the difficulties that the universities are having, particularly to address the 3 missions of the university, and especially on the 3rd mission of the university. And finally, in December 2016, a leadership workshop was organized with the participation of all the higher education managers to validate the results, the analysis done by the GRC with the outcomes of the interviews, and to try to identify a number of policy actions that could be undertaken by the region in order to improve this participation of the universities in the S3. Regarding, I will go through the main results achieved in the case study. So regarding education, there were 2 main issues that were raised during the interviews. First of all, regarding the graduates' production, so the opinion of the managers, it was that broadly speaking, there is a very good alignment of the higher educational offer with the RIS3 fields. There is a good match in the offer, but they identified a difficulty in how to support students to enter into the labor market. So it's true that the economic situation of the region it doesn't allow to absorb many of the students, or it's not the best position to absorb all of them. But it is one of the issues raised is that the university does not have knowledge on which are the labor market demands, which are the skills and competences demanded by the companies and other organizations of the socio-economic fabric. Regarding the teaching approach, 3 needs were identified during the interviews regarding new elements in teaching are needed, especially on how to introduce entrepreneurial and innovation models in the learning experience, as well as the involvement of the private sector in the courses design. So there were some experiences of participation in the knowledge alliances at European level. This is within Erasmus Plus program, but it was identified difficult to apply this philosophy to the context of the region. And they identified as well the need to have a more diversified supply of courses. Regarding the graduates, so there is well, what we got out of the interview system, there is a very good quality on how the students are prepared, and they get out of the university, but there is an insufficient quantity of students in order to address the demand of the labor market, and there is as well the problem of the brain drain, so the students do not stay in the region, and it is difficult to attract back afterward those students that migrate to in Europe. There is as well, as I was mentioning before, a problem in how to support students to entry into the labor market. So student placements are carried out by universities, but are very much ad hoc. So this is done mainly based in the individual willingness of professors, on the engagement of professors and their networks with companies. So there is a challenge on how to institutionalize this into the university system. It was identified as well as very interesting to have similar program to Erasmus, but at regional level, because, for example, SMEs do not participate much in this kind of placements, and there is an opportunity there to involve SMEs in this kind of regional Erasmus Plus, really being able to identify which are the skills and competences needed, and to get involved students in those companies to answer to those needs. As another need, it was identified that there is a data system that could identify the kind of the type of demands, the existing demands in terms of skills and competences in the labor market. It will be very much welcome. So this kind of system will need to be developed, and regional job fairs and alumni networks will be as well very much welcomed. In terms of which kind of actions could be taken by the regions in order to address these challenges, 3 of them were identified in terms of teaching. So, for example, new elements in teaching will need to be introduced, for example, in terms of multidisciplinary learning, and how to develop entrepreneurial and business management skills among the students. And especially, there is a very important opportunity for master degrees to be more aligned with the S3 priority areas, because they are closer to the market, and they can be better shaped to address those market needs. Regarding the private sector involvement, as I was mentioning before, the private sector is somewhat involved in the definition of some of the degrees of the universities, but there is a need to be done in a more systematic way, and so that the universities can offer education which is more targeting the demands of existing demands in the region. Then regarding the diversified courses supply, there is a need as well to offer online learning, online and blended learning. And there is an opportunity as well to link it with the vocational education and training, and to see how the education coming from the university can complement the one offered in terms of vocational education and training. Regarding the research mission of the universities, so higher education managers, they were telling us that S3 has put new pressure on how research needs to address regional demands, how to respond to those regional demands. So it has been identified the need to have a stronger intra-regional collaboration, so stronger collaboration between the universities should be strengthened. There is as well a need for interdisciplinary research, even though there is an important, is going to be an important challenge to do this, because there are culturally, historically, there's not been this kind of collaborations between universities. And then there is as well the need to understand by universities which are the demands in terms of research, more applied research that could be developed by universities to respond to the regional needs. And regarding the international networks and projects, there is a very big opportunity to engage in international networks, even though it is very difficult to enter into these networks due to very, very competitive funding. In terms of the third mission, as I was mentioning, there is a very limited technology transfer activities within the universities, and mainly there are four factors that they are hindering this kind of activities, third mission activities in universities. So first of all, we see structural factors and economic specialization factors. So the economic context, it is based in low-tech sectors, so it is difficult to perform this kind of technology transfer activities with these low-tech sectors. There is as well a mismatch between the supply and the demand of technology transfer. So there is a scarce knowledge by the universities on which are the capacities within the university. So they will need to work more on identifying those capacities and how to make them more attractive to the stakeholders of the region. Then there are some cultural factors that they are hindering technology transfer activities, and mainly they are related to the lack of trust between the higher education providers of technology and the demand coming from the companies. So the companies prefer to subcontract, for example, a very specific technology offered, and they look for international providers instead of going to the local universities to find this kind of knowledge. And there is a preference for technology acquisition, which is less risky because they are concerned about the whole process, delivering the expected results they are looking for. Regarding the type of activities that will be needed to address these challenges regarding the third mission, there is a need to have to undergo a stock-taking exercise, especially by the universities, in order to identify which are the demands in the region, what are the applied research demands by the companies in the region, and which is the expertise existing at the university level, and how to communicate better these existing capacities, and how to engage as well, to work more on engagement with these with the companies and understanding which are the needs in order to be able to answer to those needs. There is as well a need to build capacity within the universities. In fact, universities have technology transfer offices, but these offices are underfunded. In fact, the funding goes mainly to education and training, and technology transfer offices, they lack the trained people and their specific knowledge on how to deal with technology transfer, and they lack as well the funding. So training, for example, building capacity with a specific training for scientists and technology transfer offices would be very much welcome. And there is as well a need to reinforce those partnerships, as I was mentioning before, between the universities and the economic fabric of the region. So, as conclusions to the case study, so just to summarize, regarding teaching, there is a need for new teaching and learning methods, integrating better entrepreneurship and business management skills. There is, regarding research mission, there is a need to balance better international and local level research demands. And regarding the third mission, there's a need for more openness regarding technology transfer and better engagement with the companies within the region, and to take into consideration the inadequate legal framework and how this legal framework could be adapted to try to favor technology transfer. Regarding the next research steps that could be taken, an assessment of the governance need in terms on how to integrate universities to integrate them more actively in the governance system should be undertaken, and assess how the structural investment funds could support the identified need, especially the human capital needs within the operational programs. As a result of the case study, a policy brief has been published with the main results. This information, this policy brief is available on our website in the S3 platform knowledge repository, and well, we have done the same exercise, similar exercise for the Navarra case study. And so to finish my presentation, I will explain briefly the activities we are doing under Stairway to Excellence project. So Stairway to Excellence is a pilot project which was launched in 2014 by the European Parliament, and it is co-managed between the GRC and Directorate General for Regional Development, and it is helping to better exploit the synergies between the structural investment funds and other research and innovation programs, mainly centrally managed by the European Commission, for example, Horizon 2020, or Knowledge and Innovation Communities, COSME, or other programs. And because we believe that this better complementarity between funding can enhance the impact of smart specialization. And secondly, the project is addressing as well the innovation gap. So we are helping to have a more equal access to Horizon 2020 funds, because we are aware that especially EU13 countries are having difficulties to participate in Horizon 2020, and especially to get funding. So we are providing in this second phase of the project, we are targeting EU28 countries. In the previous phase, we were focused only in EU13 countries. And in this second phase, we are more focused on the implementation aspects and how these synergies could be built in practice. So, well, we have developed a research and innovation viewer that you can access through our website. It gives the chance to have a look to different indicators, research and innovation indicators at regional level throughout Europe. And we can see the differences across Europe in terms of the research and innovation expenditure, in terms of percentage of GDP. And we have as well the opportunity to see the Horizon 2020 per capita year across European regions. So we see clearly in the right-hand map that EU 13 countries, they are not getting as much funds as EU 13 countries. So there is a gap there. There is a need to develop the skills and knowledge on how to access Horizon 2020 programs and the structural investment funds. We believe, in fact, there is a guide that it is published on our website as well on how to build synergies in practice, and the structural investment funds can help to build the capacity within the region, and funds can be devoted in order to have a better participation in Horizon 2020, and this kind of synergies will be very much of interest within EU 13 countries. Regarding the type of activities and achievements that we have had in the project, we have developed different policy insights with lessons learned from the EU national events we organized in EU 13 countries in the previous phase, and as well as the challenges that EU 13 countries are addressing to access international science networks. As I was mentioning, we organized 13 national events, and joint statements were published together with the national authorities, summarizing the main conclusions coming out of these events. You can access this through our website, and you can find as well the facts and figures by each of the EU 13 countries, which gives a very good overview of the research and innovation ecosystem and how they are accessing to Horizon 2020. You can find as well synergies examples in different domains that could be helpful for you to see how this can be implemented in practice. And as I was mentioning, we have developed the Research and Innovation Bureau as well. And just as a glance of the more recent activities and examples of the things we are doing now in the project, we are collaborating from the GRC with several joint undertakings because they have developed an instrument to engage regions in the joint undertakings and to complement the structural investment funds coming from the region or the national level to be complemented with the joint undertaking goals and with the funds provided within the joint undertaking goals. So it is a very good example on how a program can build synergies with the structural investment funds. And another example of the activities we are doing, well, as you know, the knowledge and innovation communities, they are promoting the Regional Innovation Scheme, which is a fairly new scheme to which only certain countries can access, mainly EU 13 countries. Italy, Spain and Portugal are the only countries that can access this Regional Innovation Scheme. And it is a way to the knowledge and innovation communities to engage more with the smart specialization strategies, and to see how the knowledge and innovation communities and the co-locations can support the smart specialization strategies. So they are engaging with the managing authorities in a bottom-up approach to see how they can collaborate to work together in the framework of the smart specialization strategy. And well, the GST has signed a memorandum of understanding to collaborate with the EIT with this scheme. So we would like to, in this final part of our presentation, to have a more open discussion with you in order to see which are the specific challenges which you are addressing in the implementation of the S3. How do you find the GST support that we are providing? Which kind of activities you would welcome more from our side in order to facilitate and to try to support you in the implementation process? We heard already yesterday some issues regarding how to engage, for example, actors in the EDP process, the difficulties of engaging SMEs. So we would like to discuss with you certain issues, or well, we would like to address certain questions with you, so that we can have an open discussion and hear your opinion. So. So we would like to raise the issue about how do you see the new challenges you're addressing currently in the implementation of the S3 in the Central region, and how we can help you from the GST, which kind of activities would be more helpful from our side. So I leave the floor open to your questions, even related to this, or if you have other questions related to our presentations as well.
Thank you for your presentation. Presentation. The Joint Business Center has a lot of support for the implementation of smart specialization strategies. Supports many challenges of the RIS3 implementation. I say to ask the public if they can answer your question. They have other challenges that GRC can support it in implementation of RIS3 strategy. Maybe I will have a question, but at the end, to leave the people from the room to discuss. Maybe my colleagues from the agency can say some words, or from here. Okay.
So first, okay, it's fine.
Actually, there are two specific needs and requests which came into my mind. First one is related to monitoring and evaluation. Next year we are going to start the monitoring and evaluation of our RIS3. So we are very interested in receiving technical support for developing an effective methodology for evaluation. We need to get focused on the most relevant aspects of evaluation. We need to find reliable sources of information, to use validated tools for monitoring and evaluation, and yes, we would appreciate any support from you. And the second the second request, Dimitrios mentioned in his presentation that there is many tools, and he gave an example of this kind of tools, business idea as a main driver. And you gave a specific example, and it seems very interesting to me, and I want to find more about tools, these kind of tools, because we are interested in developing something similar in our region, in Central region.
Thank you very much for these observations and the identification of your needs and thoughts. I will start with the second, with the tools available. A lot of some of the information about how to do, how to translate business ideas into concrete projects have been codified in some of our reports, so of some of which I've brought examples here. But a lot of this information has not been committed to paper yet, and it resides with my colleagues, it resides with other regions, which is why it is also important, in addition to following manuals, to very closely engage with experts from both at the national level and internationally. The project development labs are probably the tool that appears more relevant to your immediate needs, and they have already been tested in a Romanian setting, I think useful lessons can be drawn from these. I will certainly bring you in touch with my colleague Marina Ranga, who has run these project development labs, and maybe there will be opportunities to help you more concretely, so we'll be happy to discuss these.
If we intend to organize a workshop or something like this, and to
certainly, yeah, it may be a possibility. Maybe we can discuss. Now, on your first point of monitoring and evaluation, I think I will. I think that the most relevant tool is this massive online learning course that we're developing, which is a new way to address some of the challenges in monitoring and evaluation, how to, both in terms of perspective about what can be and what should be monitored, how monitoring objective and observing and evaluating people tends to change their behavior, not always in a good way. What ways there are to combine administrative data with official statistics. Some of these are addressed in the course. Others will have to be discovered hands-on, on the ground, and there will be that additional study, both from yourselves and collaboration with others, because every case is unique. I don't know if Skarna, you want to add something to this?
Yeah, regarding the MOOC that we are developing to support regions in monitoring and evaluation of the S3, you will find as well examples, good examples from which you could learn on how the regions have developed their monitoring and evaluation system. And of course, if you are interested in organizing a workshop or to exchange practices with other regions with which we know about their good practices on monitoring and evaluation, we could collaborate in terms of putting you in contact with those regions.
I've got a more general question to you both. When I travel through my own region, Northern Netherlands, when I meet local stakeholders like municipalities or businesses, my experience is that there's quite a lot of misunderstanding about smart specialization and about research and innovation strategy. And what I then hear from them is they have a kind of oversimplified view of what smart specialization is about. That at the beginning of the period you come together with a group of people and then you make choices for priorities, and when you're not in this priority you are left out, so this smart specialization strategy is of no use to you. This is even a bit more simplified, but this is in essence what I often hear. We as a managing authority and regional government, we have difficulty explaining to them what smart specialization really is about, and also in bringing across those new insights. You mentioned a few of them, for instance, that EPP is a continuous thing. And we're trying to change this view, but we are experiencing difficulty. So my question to you, is it something that you notice as well, and is there something in the planning to assist regions in that? For instance, when I look at the risk handbook, it's a great book, but if you look at it carefully, it also presents a kind of simplistic view with these 6 steps. Do you see some change there? I mean, the incorporation of these new ideas in the methodology. Can you tell me maybe a bit more about that, relating to the future?
I wouldn't be able to say much about the future, but to address the particular issue of the inclusiveness of RIS3, it is my impression, at least, though evidently this has not been communicated very effectively, that smart specialization always was always conceived as very inclusive, very participatory, and the tendency towards prioritization was seen to be as a gradual thing that would emerge from consensus rather than a very hard decision. Well, at some point in time, there's a cutoff, whoever doesn't meet the priorities at that time is left out. And it is, in very general terms, a rather soft coordination instrument rather than a process to very rigorously and then very strictly define priorities. That's why continuity is very important in the early discovery process. And that's why the door needs to remain open for interactions throughout the process. Now, it is true that the handbook may give the impression of a more linear, stepwise, once you're done with step 3, you no longer look back at it, you go to step 4 and so forth. But this was a stylized view of the system, and perhaps we should make greater effort to communicate the fact that models and diagrams are useful in terms of presenting, summarizing information, sort of well-defined steps. But reality is more complex, and you frequently have to revisit this. We'll take this point and we will reflect on it and do what is necessary.
Well, in fact, I think in some of the S3 prioritization is being misunderstood as a prioritization of sectors instead of areas, and this is, I think, a very important difference. And so it is important to see that we are not prioritizing sectors, but in those areas we could be mixing different sectors and different domains in which the region has expertise and can excel at European level. So I think it is important that even if in the first S3 priority area identification certain areas have been well, they've got out of the picture, I think it is important in the narrowing down of those priority areas, because this is an evolving process, and some of the prioritization is being done, but very largely, because we see, for example, in some S3s, renewable energies as a priority area, which is very, very large. Everything can be in there. So in this narrowing down, I think it's interesting to explore how other areas in which the region has this expertise and can excel, can contribute, and to have other stakeholders coming into the picture, trying to narrow this down. So we are talking as well about related variety. I mean, combining different knowledges and different expertise in different sectors in order to new domains to emerge as an expertise and strong specialization areas of the region. So just to highlight this as the coming exercises that I think the regions need to be engaged in.
If I can have the next question. I am Tomáš Gyulai, representing EURADA, the European Association of Development Agencies, which is the supporting partner in this Beyond the EDP project. And I would like to contribute to the discussion to check whether I understood correctly the message that you were trying to conceive now about the complexity of the risk process. Because if you look at the manual, it can be understood as a one-time process. We make the steps, we have the result, and then after a few years we can do the monitoring as a usual program. But you mentioned that you will not have a guidebook for monitoring, but rather it's the Mastery Online course, the examples. So my perception is that the risk is not a one-time process, but a continuous process, and probably the monitoring activity should be conceived in this way, that it's not just one time we check, we are happy that it was done well, or we are unhappy that it was not successful, and that's it. No, rather the monitoring process, I think, should be built up in a participatory process, and what we can receive from the European Commission, from JRC, are just some building blocks or examples that we can use in a particular region to do the well-adapted process in that region. Or maybe I'm wrong, and there will be a guidebook for monitoring at the end. So that's my question. What we can expect in the monitoring, will it be as complex as the risk process itself? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. It's a very relevant question. The guidebooks and the tools we offer are not meant to be a straitjacket, something that someone must religiously follow, or something bad will happen to them. They are meant to be, like you said, a building block into this process. So you're right in your first interpretation of how this system of knowledge that we're co-developing with the regions works. This is not owned by the JRC, it is owned by everyone in European regions. It's distributed among knowledge about this process is distributed across a great number of people. We do very partial and very limited effort to document what we can to help transfer some of these lessons and facilitate, make everybody's life easier. In doing that, inevitably there will be occasions where what we meant to say can be misunderstood, and where occasionally someone takes this as a series, a recipe to be followed in order to prepare a smart specialization dish. But it's a lot more. There's a lot more. It's a lot more liberal than that. It's a lot more. One thing is the specific rules that the instruments need to follow. Another is the process that I think will have to be tailored to the realities of each region. Thank you again for pointing this.
Okay, I believe we have time for one more question for Natalie and a second one. Okay, so just two of them. We will have later on more time to discuss about monitoring, especially in the second part of the meeting. So please, two more questions and then we will have the coffee break.
Okay, thank you. I will try to be very concise. First one, just one remark about the survey on not on governance, on EDP. The Beyond EDP members participate closely to this survey, and Elisabetta and Immaculada made us a restitution during a peer review held in Valladolid. And we found that this survey was perfectly and completely useful for our own discussion. So my suggestion is to encourage strongly the Beyond EDP members to participate to the survey on the governance. So we will discuss together, but I think it could be very, very useful for us to have your own expertise on the governance of the risk-free and how the EDP could improve the governance and the participatory governance of the risk-free. Now, I have a question about your your issue for discussion concerning the trans-regional collaboration. I would like to know if you could make a little feedback about the S3 thematic trans-regional collaboration, for example, on energy. Why? Because in our region, we tackle some difficulties to involve, for example, our cluster and to commit them to participate in this sort of initiative, such as S3 thematic collaboration. And I would like to know your feedback about this sort of initiative.
Thank you very much, Natalie. On your first point about your experience so far with the continuous EDP survey, and how I'm very happy to hear that it has been positive, and we're very grateful for your collaboration. And we're absolutely we're delighted to continue working with you on the governance survey in particular. So we will be discussing bilaterally about the next steps on this. On the topic of S3 international collaboration and the thematic priorities, I'm afraid I'm not the right person. I don't know a lot about this. We do envisage international collaboration workshop in early 2018, and we were hoping to Beyond EDP project partners to perhaps a joint event. I think my colleague Mark Bolden mentioned Germany as a possible venue for this. So that's certainly a possibility. And about the thematic dimension, though, I really don't know. I don't know if you, Carmen, have something to add.
Yeah, well, our colleagues which are coordinating the S3 platform will be the best place to discuss with this issue, but I will try to answer briefly that we know all the regions that are facing the same kind of difficulties of engaging, especially companies in the partnerships. But I believe as well that it's been the first phase of creating the partnerships, and it's been mainly the agencies in charge of the S3 orchestration which have been leading the process of the partnerships and the creation of the partnership, identification of the capacities in the different regions. And now it comes the time of mobilizing different actors within each of the regions to get engaged in the different pilot actions that are being identified. But well, I believe as well that the new pilot calls might help in this process. And if you want, we can put you in contact with the people of the platform. Well, you know them already, but just to answer somehow to the question.
Thank you.
I don't want to steal away the coffee break, so just I can, bilaterally.
Okay.
Thank you. A lot of questions. If you have any other questions, maybe in coffee break or at the end of the conference, we take 10 minutes, 10 minutes coffee break, and after that we will hear the presentation of Mr. Hausmann about monitoring the implementation of smart specialization strategy at ADB. Let's continue. So I ask Mr. Luc Hausmann to present monitoring the implementation of RIS3.
Very happy to be here today to share with you my views about monitoring in general and risk-free monitoring in particular, and I would like to combine that with giving you some insights about the monitoring project we have been developing in collaboration with our university for about 3 years now. I would like to say in advance that don't expect me to give you a full blueprint or template for risk monitor today. Risk off? Okay. Thank you. Don't expect me today to give you a full template or blueprint for a risk-free monitor, if only for the fact that this risk-free monitor is still partly under construction today. But I really would like to share with you where we stand now, which questions we are facing, and I'm also curious about your opinions, your views. So I hope that after my presentation, which will take about 20 minutes, we can have a kind of lively discussion, and maybe this discussion can be a kind of pre-phase to a broader discussion I expect us to have in the Task Force 2 meeting in Magdeburg at the beginning of next year. First, something general about monitoring is that when I talk to people about monitoring, and I often encounter that they immediately start talking about indicators. Monitoring is kind of synonymous for indicators, and in a way that is fine, but my first question then always is, why are you collecting those indicators? And as a counter question, I ask them, what do you actually want to monitor? And then you can find a way how to monitor. So please, my advice always is, don't monitor for monitoring's sake, but really try to find some objectives first, and then try to find the indicators that match with those objectives. And in a way, this is about creating a so-called intervention logic. For those of you who don't know what intervention logic is about, this is a quite simplified picture of an intervention logic. It starts with a need in the upper left hand of the picture, so you experience some kind of problem, some kind of thing you want to change, and the change you express in an objective, the specific objective mentioned in the middle part of the picture, and then this objective is kind of standardized or expressed into a result indicator, so an indicator that can capture the change, or an indicator which can tell you if you are actually achieving this objective. And then the next step is to find means, to find actions to actually achieve this objective. The actions are mentioned in the upper right part of the picture, and then you start collecting, finding output indicators. These output indicators reflect the actions. This is basically an intervention logic picture, and what I didn't mention yet is that you also have to include other factors, because in most cases what you do doesn't have a linear causal relation with the results that you experience. There might be other factors which are of influence as well. So when I try to translate this picture, this concept of intervention logic to risk-free monitoring, I think risk-free monitoring, it works more or less the same. I think also when you start to build a risk-free monitoring system, I think really the first question you should ask yourself is, what do you intend to monitor? And this is a picture, you probably know, this is the risk assessment wheel. I particularly used this wheel instead of the linear six steps which were mentioned in the risk handbook, because this expresses more the dynamic nature of the risk process. But still, this circle, this assessment wheel, can be divided into 6 parts: the analysis of the context, the governance, the shared vision, identification of priorities, the policy mix, and then monitoring and evaluation. And what I try to do in the next picture is to look at this risk assessment wheel from a monitoring point of view. So when you look at the first part of this wheel, the regional context, for me this is about the conditions of your region, the conditions of your economy. So a question you can ask, are these conditions changing over time? This is maybe what you want to monitor. The second part of the circle is about governance. And for me, questions which come to my mind when I talk about governance is the EDP process actually working? Does this constant interaction we were talking about and you were talking about in your presentation, is this actually taking place? There are more questions to be asked, but these questions come to my mind when I think about monitoring the governance aspect of a risk-free strategy. Then the shared vision, I didn't specify that, but I go immediately to the priorities, the choices of the priorities. Questions you can ask there are, for instance, about refining choices. Are the choices you have made still the right ones, or can you be more specific than you maybe were within your region when you started designing this strategy? Did you maybe already made some promising discoveries or not? These are elements you could want to monitor in your risk-free strategy. And then last, policy mix. This is about the instruments. Are they effective or not? Are they having an influence on the objectives you have set for yourself? Are these instruments, are they targeted enough? Do we need to be horizontal or not? Questions like that you can ask. Like I said, these are questions which come to my mind. There are more questions you can ask. But just to give you an idea, an example.
This picture looks a bit more complicated. I actually took it from a JSC policy series about monitoring mechanisms. It's a really good study. I can recommend it to you. This kind of two parts. This is not a complete picture, but these are two parts of this wheel are kind of elaborated on in terms of intervention logic. In the left part of the picture, I will only explain the first line. In the left part of the pictures, you will see the strategic priorities which were chosen. In the middle, the expected changes. So this is an expression of the objectives, the things you want to achieve with your strategy. And then in the right part, this is where the objectives are expressed into results indicators. And then the right part, this is the interaction with the policy mix, or the instruments with which you want to influence the objective. The few I mentioned here, vouchers and competitive grants. And this policy mix instruments are, the outputs are expressed in output indicators. And I think when you look carefully at this picture, and especially the upper line, you can see that not only the priorities are specific, but also the indicators are quite specific. For instance, the result indicators about process innovation at Agrofood, you see the percentage or number of SMEs introducing process innovation for fresh products preservation. So they really try to be specific to create an indicator which really reflects the objective and the change you want to measure. Well, this looks perfect. I think it's a great picture, but in reality, I think most systems, at least most systems I have seen, they focus on this first part of the wheel, this first step, which is about regional context, and they don't focus as much on the actual priorities. And I think why is that? This is because there's a kind of inconsistency between the specificness of the objectives and the availability of specific indicators. Indicators which you come across from bureaus of statistics, they are in general, they are quite general. In most cases, they are not really specific enough to capture this change which you want to capture, other choices. I mean, this refining of priorities of these newly emerging activities. So this is really a problem. And we have encountered this problem for about 2 years ago, and we were already then in talks with our local university, Groningen University, with Professor Farms, people who were in Groningen in November of last year. They met him because he did this innovation cafe session together with Dominique Ferré. So what we actually did is we decided to build a monitor ourselves together, the university and us. And again, I would like to stress that this monitor is not yet a full risk-free monitor. It's still partly under construction. The first phase we have ended last summer, and we are now in the process of building sort of innovation monitor 2.0. In this 2.0, this will resemble more closely the actual risk-free monitoring system we intend to build. What is this Northern Netherlands Innovation Monitor about? It's really a monitor which gives really detailed insight into the characteristics and the behavior of the local SMEs in our region. And this monitor, this field is powered by a large-scale survey among SMEs in the region. We do this survey yearly, so that means that we are able to establish patterns. We started this in 2015, so this year was the third time we did this survey, and we can already see some patterns which have been established. In fact, this monitor is not just one monitor, it's a kind of composite of individual monitors. It's partly risk-free, it's partly a monitor which gives information about a so-called innovation pyramid. This is a well-known concept in my country, which characterizes SME companies with respect to the degree of innovativeness. And we also included CO2 reduction indicator for our operational EADF program in our region. And the reason for combining everything is that it gave us the possibility to only approach our target group, SMEs, which are often busy people, only once a year and not more often. So this was really the intention we had. So the survey, as I said, it's a large-scale survey. Each year, over 4,000 companies are approached. On average, the response rate is about 20%. It's actually increasing over the year, but it's about 20%. Maybe it seems low, but when I hear my professor saying that 20% is actually quite high, because on average, I believe in scientific research, you get a response rate of about 10%. So he was already the first time he was really happy when so many companies decided to participate in this survey. Why is this rate this high? I think it's due to a combination of factors. First of all, I think our communication approach, we are really active in communicating the monitor, communicating the results. We have quite clever, I think, social media approach. We have our own Twitter account for the innovation monitor. I think as important is that we involve stakeholders in design, in the implementation of the monitor. It's a joint initiative by SNN, our regional organization, and Groningen University, but it's not solely limited to those two partners. We have included, and we are including more and more, what we call strategic partners into this initiative, intermediaries, development agency, an agency of our National Ministry of Economic Affairs. And what we offer them to the ability to include certain questions into the survey, topics they are interested in, and in return we ask them their database of companies, because the database is never completed. So we have kind of understanding with these partners that you can become partners with them. And we can offer this, but then you have to do that, and it works pretty well. For the companies who participate, we give something in return. So we don't only ask them to participate in the survey, but we give them something in return, and the something in return is what we call an innovation passport. Actually, it's a kind of benchmark report where the kind of performances of this individual company are compared to several averages of similar companies of similar size, of similar sectors in the same region. So this is of use to them. And in addition, we give them the possibility to join what we call an expert panel. This is a group of companies we consider to be as a kind of policy review group. We involve these companies in the further implementation of our risk. We ask them for comments, for instance, about their policy instruments, and this is really a way, it's really important, really a way for us to commit stakeholders, not only to the monitor, but to the implementation of our smart specialization strategy. And of the about 800 companies who participated in the survey this year, about 100 of them, it's quite a large number, are now a member of this expert panel. Also important is that if you want to do a survey, and people who make surveys, they know it, that don't make the questionnaire too long. Don't ask too many questions, because then you won't get all the answers, or you won't get the response at all. So we really have as a target, we limit the questionnaire to 50 questions. About 2/3 of those questions are questions which are asked each year, and 1/3 of the questions are kind of flexible, partly dependent on the stakeholders, who, like I said, who can propose us to include questions into the seminar, also partly because of our own specific interest. For instance, this year we asked some additional questions about collaboration in new innovation and networks and things like that. Majority of the questions are closed-ended questions, because they're easy to process, of course, and it takes about 20 minutes to fill in the full questionnaire. And in fact, this monitor is really affordable. because nowadays you can really go to the internet and you can find the software even for free to build your own questionnaire, SurveyMonkey or software like that. So the main cost actually for us in this monitoring, this project with the university is a PhD. So we pay half of the cost of this PhD. This PhD is employed full-time. It's full-time dedicated to this innovation monitor. And this is really, this works really well. So I said detailed insight about the characteristics of SMEs, so what it is about, what kind of questions do we ask. First of all, are companies innovative or not? Do they innovate? Do they create new products, new services, or are they active in organizational innovation? R&D, do they have their own internal R&D, or do they acquire R&D externally? What about human capital? Is the organization dedicated to innovation or not? Do they use key enabling technologies? Do they use innovation support? And if yes, what kind of support? And collaboration, this is really, really important aspect of the monitor. Do companies actually collaborate with other companies, collaborate with knowledge institutes, with bigger companies, even with customers and civil society? Are they active in innovation networks? Do they participate in what we call innovation environments, living labs and things like that? And in general, this gives us an impression of the participation in this continuous EDP by SMEs. So I made a translation just to give you an impression of the kind of questions we ask in our questionnaire. First one I translated is about cats. Just what we ask is choose to which degree cats are relevant with respect to the R&D activities of your company, and then you can answer not at all, relevant but not involved yet, or relevant and involved. You see, these are simple questions with simple close-ended answers. Innovation support. We include a table into the questionnaire with all kind of support instruments which are available for those companies within our region. And we ask them for each particular instrument if they ever heard of it, if they heard of it but didn't apply, or if they applied. Collaboration, we have several questions about collaboration. I included only a few, the most basic ones. First question of all, of course, is did you collaborate at all? And if they did, then they have the possibility. We include a list with all kind of innovation networks, environments we know in our region, and then they can apply if they collaborate in those initiatives or not. And finally, I included and translated a few questions about HR, HRD. Questions we ask, for instance, within our organization, efforts to create new solutions or ideas which are surprising are supported widely, and then they can say we agree or we not agree. Like I said, this is just an impression. Unfortunately, I don't have a full translation of the questionnaire yet, but I already asked my colleagues to organize that, so maybe in Magdeburg next year we will have the full questionnaire translated. I already said this is an innovation monitor. It's not a full risk-free monitor yet. We do have this aim. For us, it's a kind of step-by-step process. We want to improve this monitor each year, but we don't want to do it too fast. And the challenge, I already said, it's a challenge to be more informative, to get more out of this questionnaire, but without becoming too extensive, in the sense that without including more questions into the questionnaire. So if you want to include, it means that we have to skip out questions, and the process we take really carefully. But we're actually focusing on now the improvements we are making at the moment is that this additional focus on collaboration, I already said this is really an important part of the monitor, but we want to elaborate more on that. And the second one, at least as important, is this emerging new activities. Can we actually see something new happening, something coming out of this constant EDP process we are promoting all the time in our region? And then the question is, at least for us, how to recognize those new emerging activities. Which questions should we ask? Because in our opinion, it's too simple to ask for development within sectors, and like I said, it's a question and mostly with closed-ended questions, and we cannot include too many open-ended questions. So we have to find some kind of typology to really be spot on in sense of that we recognize what actually is taking place on the ground. And this is something which is not easy, and I really would like to, if you are facing the same problems, I would really like to exchange views with you, because this is something I'm discussing all the time with my professor, how to do this. Actually, we created we did an application for an INSO project, specifically focused on that. Unfortunately, it wasn't, it was not, we had a good evaluation, but it was someone better than us, so we didn't receive the approval for that application. But anyhow, we will continue with this. Maybe a possibility is to focus on societal challenges, because societal challenges are broader than sectors, or you mentioned it already as well. But like I said, we're still kind of searching in this respect. What questions do we ask? This is my final sheet. Some concluding remarks, maybe a summary. Like I said in the beginning, really I would like to stress monitoring is not just about finding indicators. It starts really with looking at yourself. What do I and what do my stakeholders need to know to be effective in implementing and designing and implementing a strategy? And if you cannot find what you need, then maybe consider building something yourself, not on your own, together with the local university and other stakeholders as well. And again, we don't have all the answers yet. We are still in this kind of discovery process of improving this monitor, and it's really interesting. I really enjoy doing that together with our university, but we're constantly facing challenges. And I would like to repeat that the focus for us at the moment is on, firstly on the governance, in the sense of this interaction. Is it taking place? Is it continuous? Are we not losing momentum? And secondly, again, on the outcome, the defining of choices, these emerging new activities. So this concludes my presentation, and I'm really curious about you. So I hope we can start a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. From my point of view, it's a good example of how to find monitoring and how to involve also the stakeholder in the process of the monitoring, which I think is essential for the implementation of RIS3. If there are questions from...
Thank you. Thank you, Luke. I think it's been quite interesting, the presentation. First of all, I have a clarification request. The benchmark report you mentioned that you offer the companies that participate in the survey, is it made for each company individually, or is a more general benchmark report that you share with all the participants?
It's individually.
Okay.
Each company receives a kind of tailor-made report. It's processed mostly automatically because of certain software we have, but it's tailor-made to the company. Yeah.
Okay, then I have two questions. The first one, I have the power now. The first one is, as you are referring to a monitoring system 2.0, are you changing the official monitoring system you included in your RIS3 document and presenting it again understand what I mean?
I surely understood the first part of the question. Well, the reality is that up till now, we didn't really have a full risk-free monitoring system.
Okay.
We have indicators, of course, like any other region, and even quite many of them. But this is kind of an overhaul of the efforts we took about 2 or 3 years ago. So now we really want to do it right. This is what this will replace everything we had so far.
But when you officially presented the history of your region, it contained a range of indicators.
Sure.
So
these were indicators mostly provided by the National Bureau of Statistics, and a few of them were regionalized on our request. So we went to them, and after receiving those indicating information, we concluded that it's not specific enough, even if it was regionalized, and the quality of the data wasn't what we expected, and it has to do with the limited numbers of participants in the survey, because the National Bureau of Statistics also uses the survey, the Community Innovation Survey. So we had some problem because when you go deeper, in the sense of when you regionalize, the numbers get lower, and then so that was a problem.
You are keeping those, and you are implanting new indicators to your system. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, as you have just said, you have problems to find the official indicators when you want to go deeper and regionalize data, and specifically by economic sectors, it's also difficult. So you are building indicators yourself. We are doing the same in our region, but we find the problem that when you want to compare your region with others at the European level, each region is choosing specific indicators and building the indicators itself. So it's going to be quite difficult to do that benchmark at the European level. Have you came up with any kind of solution to that, or you are just?
That's a good question, and we asked this question ourselves. And of the 50 questions we asked, about 1/3 of them are questions we didn't made up ourselves. So we took them from other surveys, just particularly for the reason to be able to compare them afterwards. Like I said, it's kind of composite of monitors, but it's still partly it's a problem.
Yeah. Well, maybe our colleagues from History Platform are.
Maybe everyone follows us then.
Yeah. Okay.
Then we can compare. But
yeah. Well, it's a usual topic discussed in every forum about monitoring and evaluation. So I hope that we will finally come up with a solution for that. And my last question is about including more qualitative approach to the survey. In our region, we are combining a survey similar to yours, recollecting some data, but also we are trying to work through working groups with the stakeholders to get a glance at these kind of questions you already asked, specifically for to assess the progress in specialization in the different excellence areas of our region, and the progress with regards to the priority of RIS3. So we are going to combine the qualitative and the quantitative approach. I don't know if you have thought of a similar approach in the region.
Yes, like I said, this monitor is specifically aimed at SMEs. So it's not the whole spectrum of stakeholders, actors involved in the RIS3 implementation. We have some other panels. Okay. And within these panels we acquire this qualitative insight we need. For instance, we have a panel for human capital. Human capital. Okay. This is where educational institutes and research institutes and also civil society are involved. Okay. And we ask them yearly as well. But these are smaller panels. Okay. And we combine, but we can improve on that aspect.
Yeah, I think it's a learning by doing process.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have two questions, a short one and a longer one. So the short one is, as understood from your presentation and your answers, these questions, so the indicators that are behind these questions are new ones compared to the race process itself. So it is some sort of learning by doing, as she mentioned, that in the process this is developed and tested and probably improved for the next round. So that's do I understand correctly? Is it a good example of that? And the other point is, or the question is about the inclusiveness. You mentioned this board for human resource. I know that in dinner time we discussed about some innovation board. So probably it would be interesting to hear about how this particular monitoring activity is linked with the different stakeholder groups that you are involved. Is it institutionalized in a way, or how it is done? Thank you.
To the first question, I can answer just shortly, yes. And the second question, it is institutionalized in the sense that it's fully accepted all over the region, and it's accepted by our board as the innovation monitor for the region. And we have this, like you said, we discussed over dinner. We have a Northern Innovation Board which is responsible for the governance of the smart specialization strategy. This board is also responsible for the monitoring of the strategy. But when I look at it in reality, they are not focusing as much on these aspects as they are focusing on initiatives, projects, flagship initiatives. So there's something lacking there in our region at the governance level. When you go to the lower levels, the networks, the innovation environment, then risk-free implementation actually works. So our region is really a bottom-up process, and this monitor is also a bottom-up process in the sense that we are kind of creating and experiencing enthusiasm, and more stakeholders want to get involved because they see it's interesting, they see it's useful for them as well. So in this sense, it's kind of natural evolvement that took place, that the monitor became the risk-free monitor. It's not fully yet, but the risk-free monitor for our region. So there was no formal decision made or an order given to us, so go and improve the system. No, we just had exchanges with the university, with stakeholders, and then we concluded, okay, this we can start and see how it goes.
Okay, this is exactly why I asked this question, because I think it proves, what you have just said, it proves very well that in case, if in a region there is a lack of sensibility at the governance level about this question, then you can compensate it with a very good involvement of the local players, so from with a bottom-up approach. And I think it is a very good lesson for quite many regions, because I know a couple of them where lack of good governance is definitely a valid statement. Okay, thank you. Yeah, microphone.
Thank you. Hello, here is Cristian Goțea from West Regional Development Agency. Now we are involved in an Interreg project called Monitoris, who started just January 2017 and who has as an objective this, especially this aspect. Each region has to establish a monitoring system for its smart specialization strategies. And for our region, it's a very big challenge. And in our case, it's a little bit different to the center region, because we developed our smart specialization strategy back in 2013. At that moment, we didn't know that how the financing will look like and if there will be a financing for smart specialization strategy. Now we have this possibility to partially cover our strategy with regional operational funds. And at that moment, methodologically, when we created our smart specialization strategy, we established a set of indicators, but we did not establish a monitoring system. We had the indicators, but they were theoretical. Now what is happening to us is that we have this possibility to finance project, and now we have to, again, to recreate or organize our indicators related to the project that will be financed through the regional operational funds. This will be more appropriate to reality. And financing is very much like a market. Sometimes the financing system has some objective, and the beneficiaries have different type of objective. And between them, we have to establish the indicators that will monitor how the strategy will be actually achieved, or the objective of the strategy will be achieved. So this is kind of a challenge for our region. We cannot rely on national statistical office, because they are not at all, let's say, they are not monitoring the innovation. And I'm not sure if any initiative at regional level would be further possible to be seen or to in the national indicator system that they are implementing. So I think in our case it's rather a project-based monitoring of the strategy. So this is kind of our challenge.
Isn't there maybe kind of possibility for you to kind of team up with the other regions in your country and try to build something yourself, or maybe regionalize data? Because Romania is a bigger country than my country. Maybe when you regionalize data, you get the information you need, which we couldn't find in our region.
This could be a solution with all the other regions to start discussion of a possible common, not common methodology, but a common approach regarding, because all the region will have this challenge of monitoring related to a financing instrument.
Sorry? Sorry, I don't.
Het probleem met de interventielogica die ze gewoon hebben. Je wil gewoon een bepaalde doel bereiken waar je instrumenten sluiten.
My colleague is talking about the intervention logic. He is saying that you should be really careful designing the system, taking into account the intervention logic. So, like I said in my presentation, don't start with the indicators, but start with the objectives. And I think you understood that. Okay, thank you.
We are facing the same challenges and problems as our colleagues from West Region, and we are very interested in the project we are involved in. So we want to find more about the project,
Okay, I would say
and the project results.
Did you have any outcomes of your innovation monitoring, for example? Did you discover new opportunities or concerning your risk-free? Did you refine your risk-free priorities, something like that?
We didn't refine them yet, because I think this is too early, but there really were some results which were really, really interesting for us, and maybe one of the most interesting one was that innovation sometimes comes from unexpected sources, unexpected companies, even in unexpected sectors. For instance, we have a shipping building sector in our region. It doesn't receive much attention because it's considered to be quite traditional. But then the monitoring revealed that the companies we have in that sector are really, really innovative. They really are kind of front runners in the field, and we didn't even know, although these companies are only 30 kilometers away from where we are. And another interesting conclusion was that the high innovators, I mean the companies in the top of this innovation pyramid, which I mentioned, they almost always collaborate with other companies, with other research institutes. But at the same time, they not only collaborate, but they also do extensively in internal R&D. So it's not the companies who don't have this internal R&D organized and kind of buy or take knowledge from elsewhere, even when they collaborate, they are not as successful as these other companies. So it's always a combination of collaboration only. It's not a key to success. You have to combine it with internal R&D, for instance, and other factors. So these are really interesting insights from this monitor, from the last edition of the monitor.
Thank you.
There was a question from Andrea as well, before or not? No.
I think following on from what Natalie said, I think you have a smart answer to that, so I just asked you. The passport the SMEs are given, that's an incentive to cooperate.
Yes.
But is it not that the more innovative SMEs are then have more incentives to participate than the not so innovative ones? Because as they know that in the end they will get this, this benchmark, which is good for them, it shows they're innovative, they will cooperate. Companies that think that maybe we're not that good may have disincentives. They will not cooperate because they think our result will not be that good. So that you capture then the more successful ones, the more innovative ones, right? Which then would lead to the problem that when a lack of SMEs, competitiveness is the problem, then these companies are not part of the monitor. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I wonder what you're reflecting on.
I see what you mean. Actually, we do have kind of an issue with the database. Like I said, we are attracting other partners, strategic partners, to become strategic partners, because for us it's really useful to extend this database. Because what we saw, especially in the first edition, is that the companies that responded to the questionnaire were mostly innovative companies. So instead of having a pyramid like this, a bit extreme, but we had more a pyramid like this. And this, of course, influenced the overall result of this survey. But even then, you can compare the companies, so the results were still useful. But we are constantly aiming to extend this database. I think this innovation passport, this is really a passport for them. Like I said, it's individual. We don't publicize anything, or so they can use it or not if they feel it's useful or not. So it's up to the companies, and they don't think it passport in itself as any incentive for companies to do this or do that.
But I can speak like that. The other question is directly related to the remark of Klaus. What about the counterfactual analysis? Okay, do you want me to explain?
No. I know what you're talking about, actually. Actually, I had a discussion last week with the colleagues, because at the moment, every evaluation is being done by an external company. They're evaluating our previous ERDF program. And they gave us as a comment that they were lacking data to do a counterfactual analysis, which I like to have done. But then my reply was, when you look at the program, most of the projects we supported were large, complex, uncomparable. So I think counterfactuals are only useful when you have a large number of beneficiaries, which you can compare with non-beneficiaries, being them real non-beneficiaries or maybe virtual. So I think counterfactuals only work in specific cases in specific areas. I don't think it's really a useful method in relation to risk-free monitoring. more in terms of maybe monitoring grant schemes or when you have standardized projects, like I said, with large numbers. So it's not the key to everything, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But surely you will agree.
Okay, there is another question? No?
Perhaps not a question, but a consideration. If, from my point of view, I would like to conclude in this term. If we think in terms of the document we have presented to the Commission that was a precondition, etc., probably we have a very small span to decide how to modify our monitoring system, the indicator we have decided to use, and effectively use the results, the outcomes, the feedback from the monitoring process, because probably we have a very small span to decide how to change our strategy in the next month. But in other terms, probably we have to learn a lot from this monitoring process in terms of how to improve our governance system and our capacity to support the development process in our context. But not in terms of that document, of course.
No, I fully agree, and I think, as I said in my presentation, we really built this monitoring system because we want to see what's going on. So we want to monitor ourselves. We don't do it because we need to include a monitoring system or something about monitoring in a strategy or submit it to the Commission. What we submitted to the Commission in 2015, it's really like this. It's almost nothing, and they agree. So, and now we are, since 2 years, we are really seriously active in building a monitoring system. So.
Thank you. If there are no opinions, questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hasman, for your presentation and input in our conference. If there are no other opinion aspects to want to be discussed here, I want to conclude this part of the conference, and I want to thank you very much for your active involvement in this conference. I think it was a good exchange of opinions, experience, how to tackle with different challenges that we are encounter in our implementation of smart specialization strategies. Maybe we'll find some solution for our challenges, but in the same way, I think we discover other challenges in our implementation of RIS3 strategy. Thank you again for your involvement. I want to say goodbye to you, and for the one who go home, to have a nice trip back home, and for the others that will stay to the study visit and to the dinner, to have a nice time here in our region. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Okay, so just some quick remarks of the remaining agenda of the event. Now we will have lunch. It's in the same restaurant that we had yesterday. After that, we will come back in this room for the task force. For the ones that are not attending the task force but will join us for the study visit, the pickup will be right here in front of the conference room. We will have a bus that will take us to the study visit and dinner, and after dinner we will be transferred by bus again to hotel. So enjoy your lunch, 5 p.m. Please be in front of the hotel. And for the others who will stay for the task force, we will meet again here after we have lunch. Okay?
Can we fix a time for that?
Sorry?
So when shall we start the task force?
I don't know, what time shall we start?
Let's see what time is. Do you think we can manage to eat in 40 minutes? More or less, yeah?
I think that we don't need so much time for the tax force, so maybe
It's all the same. I suppose we will not be here from 2 to 5, so if it's just 1 hour and a half, then you can go to your room or just stretch your legs, take a walk in a park, and we'll meet back here.
I just said this because I think we don't need to eat in a hurry, so you can have lunch relaxed and then not relax too much, but
Anyway, we will be all of us in the same restaurant, and yeah, we will be close by. When we finish, we come here, okay?
sí, era de ayer.